All right, so if you could just take us through your coaching career and coaching path, from the start to now, if that'd be great.
Yeah, definitely. So I started off at Tuckahoe High School in 1999. My father was a coach there, so I was going to Iona College. I got hurt playing football, so I just ended up volunteering. My first year or two, and then I officially joined in 2001 as like a paid assistant. 2002, I started as a defensive coordinator, and I was there until 2013 at Tuckahoe. And then from there, I kind of bounced around a little bit for a little while. I was at Stepinac for 1 year, Hackley for a year. Got to write this down. Iona for 2 years. I took a year off. I went to Eastchester for a year. And then when I came back to Tuckahoe as the head coach in 2020.
Great. And can you just tell us like a little bit more about Tuckahoe, the program you guys have there right now?
Yeah, so we're a really small school. Like, people don't realize how small of a school we are. We only graduate, anywhere between like 60 to 70 kids each year. And that's co-ed. So when you think about it, you're dealing with like 35, 40 kids in a grade. So numbers-wise, it's tough. We've been very fortunate, though, to have, a pretty successful program. Kids want to be part of, the Tuckahoe football program. And it's kind of something that, we've inherited also. Tuckahoe dates back to having like good teams from like, the 70s and 80s, and even the 90s. So, it's a really rich tradition that we have at Tuckahoe.
Yeah, and I just want to also say I live in Bronxville, like 2 minutes away from Tuckahoe High School. My brother's on the 5th-6th team right now. And
okay, cool.
And I go to GCDS, and we had the joint practice with you guys early in the year, so I'm familiar with the program. I just want to say like how great a program it is, and I really admire what you guys are doing there, and how.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah. And what would you say is your coaching philosophy, and how would you say it's changed throughout all the schools you've been at, and what it started as versus what it is today?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. So it's definitely changed. I think just in general from, when I started to now, in terms of kind of like the expectations and the commitment level has kind of changed, a little bit. I think society has changed a little bit in that, it's 25 years. I don't consider myself that old, but I guess when you put that on paper and look at it like that, it really has, definitely has changed. I think one thing that has helped me from when I left Tuckahoe to come back was the organization, and like the amount of detail, the way that like we plan out practice, like the way like that when we had our practice with you guys, you saw, prior to me being at Tuckahoe the first time, like we would never practice like that. We wouldn't have like a fast tempo, every 5 or 10 minutes, like switch into a drill. So I think that kind of helped me as a coach in, especially being at Stepinac and Iona and working with some of those coaches, was able to just see, the amount of detail in practice. I think that's one way that I've become a much better coach and have changed.
Yeah, and you mentioned coaching on the same staff as your dad at Tuckahoe. I'm not sure at Iona too if you did. What was like that like for you and learning from him? How was that process?
It was great. I think a lot of I credit him for a lot of the things that I have today as a coach. A lot of the foundations that I have. I think a lot of the way that I communicate with kids, whether I realized it or not, I really did learn from him. I was fortunate to be his water boy. He coached at Eastchester first before Tuckahoe. So, I literally grew up on the sidelines. I could date back to remember when I was in second grade in 1988 to being a water boy, on the sidelines and being at all those games. So I kind of grew up quick and grew up, around the locker room. So it was kind of just what I was expecting, like what I was expected to do. So like a lot of things I think that he taught me without actually trying to teach. It was just by, picking things up and just by observing. Like one thing I think, he does a good job, or he did a great job when he was coaching, of communicating to the kids, making sure that each kid feels important and feels valuable. The 30th kid on the team would feel just as important as the starting running back. And I think he would go out of his way really to do that for the kids. And that's something that I've, taken on and that I really try to do also.
And, growing up around the game and your dad being a coach, was coaching football something you always knew was for you, something you wanted to do, or did you kind of fall into it? Because I know you said you volunteered first.
Yeah. I always knew I wanted to get into coaching and education. So currently I'm a special ed teacher. I've been, doing that for 15, 16 years at Tuckahoe. I didn't know that was the path. Originally, I thought I wanted to, maybe get into, health and phys ed, like, a lot of people do. So I graduated, I got my undergrad in psychology, and then I started working with a student, who was a special needs student. And I was like, you know what, this is like the path that I want to go. And I thought that I was coaching at Tuckahoe at the time. So I kind of thought I had a better opportunity to get in the school district as a special ed teacher. And it worked. But, coaching is something that, I guess it's just in the blood. It's just something that I do. It's something that I've always just, wanted to do. It's just, I guess it comes natural to me.
Yeah, and just throughout like all the different schools you've been at or at Tuckahoe, is there like a game or a moment that really you think about a lot or sticks out to you that you really enjoyed or maybe didn't enjoy as much?
Yeah, I mean, so we were fortunate. We've made it to Syracuse 4 times at Tuckahoe.
Oh, wow.
So for us, that's, obviously where the state championship is. The first time we got there, it was 2004. We had a couple good teams in 2002, 2003. We were like knocking on the door. We got there in 2004 and we lost by 1 point on an extra point. So we took the lead, we kicked off, they returned the kickoff for a touchdown. They went for 2 and got it. And at that point, I was very, very young in my career, but it's like you just never know like when you're going to, get back there. Are we ever going to get back there? Fortunately, we had some young guys on the team. 2 years later in 2006, we got back there and won it. So that was like really important. Like I'll never forget, the first time we won, the football state championship. It was the first time in Tuckahoe history that we ever won it. We went back in 2010, which was probably one of the better teams that Tuckahoe has ever had. We won the state championship. In fact, the only game we lost was to your town, Bronxville. That year we were both, it was weird. So we were both actually in the same league, but they were in Class C, we were in B, and they won it in Class C, and we won it in D. But that was our one loss in the regular season, but we won it in 2010. And then we lost in 2012, probably a game that we should have lost. I think we just lost to a better team up there. But, all 4 times, it's just such a remarkable experience just being up there. Something that I hope, I have the opportunity to get back there someday.
And in bigger games like that, obviously Syracuse is probably on a different level because of just the stadium, the game, everything like that. How do you get your kids to just, do you get them to treat it like a regular game, or do you kind of, set the stage a little bit? I'm not sure.
So, that's a great question. I think the first time we were there, everyone was like in awe, from coaches to the community to the players. I think we got a little spoiled because the next couple years, it wasn't kids' first times there. Like they might have had a younger brother on the team, so a lot of kids were either on the team, maybe as like a 9th grader, or they came to the game as like a middle school student. Because when you walk in the Carrier Dome, it's an overwhelming experience. Mm-hmm. You walk in this huge, a huge dome with 40,000 people. 40,000 seats, not at that game, but they have the jumbotron playing. So I think after we were there the first time, in kind of knowing what to expect, and like talking to the kids the whole week about things that you're going to expect. Even little things like we would have to travel. 2 of the times we traveled on Thanksgiving, so we played the next day. So we would have to talk about we're going to practice in Tuckahoe Thanksgiving morning. We're going to have Thanksgiving dinner up there. We're not going to go crazy on turkey. Making sure really paying attention to every little detail. And I think just the experience part, helped us after we were there that first time.
Yeah, and you mentioned the community there. So, Tuckahoe, I know at least compared to Bronxville and a bunch of other towns here, cares a lot about the football and they love their football. What is coaching in a town like that? Kind of, they have higher expectations, but they also are into the games more. What is that coaching in a town like that like?
So, to me, there's nothing better than coaching at a small school and having that support. Again, I've been fortunate to coach at Iona and Step, in some bigger schools. But there's just something about being at that small school feel, that small school environment where everybody knows everybody, and like you said, it's a ton of support. Our home games now are kind of turning into an event. So if Tuckahoe football is playing at 1:30 on a Saturday afternoon, everybody's there. Everybody in the community comes. They come to support. When we play a Friday night game, when we bring in lights for homecoming, it's standing room only. Everybody comes. And it's something that the kids, are able to look forward to. And it's something that I take a lot of pride in. I think it's awesome because, not every town is a football town. Not every team has, that kind of support. So I tell the kids, constantly how lucky they are, to be in a place that cares so much about football. One, from your administration and your school, that they care so much, and then you have alumni that graduated 30, 40 years ago that have no ties to the school anymore. They don't know anybody, but they just want to keep coming back because, they had such a great time at Tuckahoe and, they just want to cheer the guys on.
Yeah, and with that, the history of Tuckahoe, specifically the football history, and going to Syracuse a bunch of times, and just what do you preach as the standard? Do you use a lot of Tuckahoe football history, stuff like that?
I try to. I will say, when I was there the first time, from that 99 to 13, and again, we were able to get there 4 times. We made it to the state semis, a bunch. In looking back now, I think we were almost taking things for granted on how good we were and what the expectations were. Because now I look at it as we're busting our ass and we're working hard, but we're not close to, getting back there. It was almost like a rite of passage at that time. But, again, it came with a lot of hard work, for the kids. So it's tough because, again, while I was in it, I didn't realize how fortunate or what we were actually doing. I guess it was just every year, it was all right, it's we're expected to, not win a state championship, but we're expected to, at least be in the state semifinals and make a good run at it. Whereas now it's been 10 years since we've been back there.
Yeah, and just in the off season, and how do you? I'm not sure because there's different rules for different schools about how much you can do in the off season. How do you make sure that your kids are always being accountable during the off season and always working towards that goal? And do you have a lot of multi-sport athletes, Tuckahoe? Because it's a small school, so
yeah. So that's one thing. Because we are such a small school, we have a lot of kids that play basketball in the winter. Lacrosse is starting to pick up at Tuckahoe. It's fairly new here for us, so that's something that is starting. And baseball, is big. So I would say, we have about a 40-man roster from 9 through 12. We don't have a JV team. Out of those 40 kids, I'd say about half, so about 20 kids are playing a sport. whether it be in the winter or the spring. And so what we say is, and I'm a firm believer of this, is that while you're playing a sport, like that's your number one priority. So when you're in winter, like basketball is your priority. That should be your main focus. If you're able to get some lifts in, when you're not practicing, when you don't have a game, if it works in the schedule, awesome. And the same thing in the spring. But I don't put pressure on the guys that are playing a sport by any means. But then on the other hand, if you're not playing a sport, like you better be there, working out in the winter and spring months. In the summer, we've been pretty lucky with, we have a pretty good turnout. The kids that play lacrosse don't really do summer lacrosse. I have a couple kids that play travel baseball, but it's not like huge. So usually in the summer, like football is like a main priority. I try to get the dates out early, so like we do a mini camp at Tuckahoe, like the end of June. So we have a pretty good turnout for that. We do a week camp with Roosevelt High School in Yonkers. So we get a good turnout to that, and then the kids will have lifts. But like I tell them, like you guys are high school kids. Like I go away, I expect you guys to go away. But when you're home and you're not doing anything, you're expected to be there in the off season.
And a lot of coaches, preach like player leadership and like keeping your teammates and underclassmen accountable. Is that something you guys really prioritize, or are you all like?
Yeah. So one thing that we did this off season it's kind of the first off season that we've done it. So I'll let you know next year when we talk how it worked out for us. But we put so we have 4 captains. Each captain basically is in charge or a leader for 10 guys. So so now it would be like the current 8th graders, 9, 10, 11. And so what I'm trying to do is have the senior or the juniors who are going to be captains, show a little bit more leadership and kind of like be in charge of a group to take some ownership, to do it that way. And then the captains will report to me. So if, Johnny, who's in 10th grade, is missing a workout, I can go to the captain. All right, who's Johnny's captain? Why isn't he coming? So that's something that, we're trying to do this year to kind of give our captains also a little bit more responsibility as well.
Yeah, and then also sounds like keeping the underclassmen, like you said earlier, like make them feel just as important as the starting quarterback or the starting running back.
Yeah.
How else do you try and make your underclassmen, stay motivated even if they're not getting on the field a lot or if they're struggling?
So one thing that we put in, we did it when I came back, is we started a varsity B, call it like a team, a program. So basically, the guys that don't play a lot on Saturday, we kind of have a scrimmage with another team, usually on that Monday. We don't do it every week, but throughout the course of the year, we'll probably do it about 4 or 5 times a year. So those younger kids have something to look forward to. So it's not like they're just like standing, holding a dummy, all year. So they have those scrimmages that they get to look forward to and play. And I also try to really make a conscious effort to try to get younger kids in wherever I can. Now, am I going to put a kid that's in 9th grade in at quarterback in a 7-7 game? No. But, there's a good opportunity that, they can get in on a special team or, they can get in here and there, and just to make themselves, they feel good. This year our schedule was tough. We were 5-4. We lost 4 games by a touchdown or less. So we didn't have the opportunity to, get as many guys in as many games. But, there are some seasons where we'll have some lopsided games in our favor. And, those are the games where I really make a conscious effort going in to make sure that, we have 40 guys on the team. There are going to be 40 guys that are going in and out and playing in the game. Because it's important. You get a 9th grader on the field, even if it's only for 2 or 3 plays, in front of, 1,000 people on, your homecoming, that's big for that kid. Yeah. So that's really what I try my best to do.
And sorry to keep jumping around, but You
Yeah.
mentioned these kind of sound like traditions you're starting to create. Is there any traditions that you really love or that you've kind of put in at Tuckahoe that really separate you guys?
Uh, like little things where it's like I try to make it more of like a program, so it's like a
Mm-hmm.
year round, thing. Uh, I don't think football is the kind of thing where you can only do 3 months out
Yeah.
of the year. The kids put in so much time. We want to make sure that there's a lot of buy-in. Um, one new thing that I did do when I came back was we put in a senior breakfast this year. So before the last home game that Saturday morning, we have a breakfast just for the seniors and their parents. Um, and it's kind of just one last moment to just kind of honor them in a small group. We don't have the whole team, and I also have the seniors, get up and kind of thank their parents about the journey and everything that they've been through. So it turns out to be, a little bit of an emotional morning because, some of these kids have been playing football since, third or fourth grade, and now it's their senior year, and, it's one of the last times they're ever playing. So, it's emotional for the kids, but it's also emotional for the parents. A lot of these parents, have a hard time, like, all right, it's done. Like I've been driving my kid to practice for all these years. I've been going to all the games. Now it's over for them also. So that's something that I think is pretty cool that we've started. I know the parents really enjoy it. I, as a coach, enjoy it, just kind of like sitting back and listening to what the kids say in terms of like thanking their parents for the journey.
Yeah, and also at a smaller school like Tuckahoe, you mentioned you don't have a lot of kids on the team, like only 40. Do you try and recruit other kids from the school that want to play, or do you kind of go by like, if you want to be here, you're going to be here. If you're not, we don't need you. So how do you
Yeah,
go about
I mean,
that?
I think that's one of the biggest things you have to do at a small school is recruit the hallways. You
Mhm.
know, I'm lucky that I'm there. I'm in the building, so I'm a middle school teacher, but our middle school high school is combined.
Yeah.
It's a really small school, so I actually like being an eighth grade teacher because then I kind of get to see the kids when they're in middle school. So I get to form a relationship with them before they even get to high school. But again, I think that's so important. Like, this year we were able to get this kid, Jackson Snyder. He was a receiver. He was a senior. He never played football before. He tried when he was in 10th grade. His parents were a little reluctant about the injury factors. But we kept pushing and pushing. And finally, going into senior year, his parents were like, listen, if you want to do it, you can do it. He ended up being a two-way starter, honorable mention All State, had 6 touchdowns. I mean, he was great. Like when I tell other coaches, this kid's only played football for basically for like 4 months, like they look and like that's crazy. But you really need every kid at a small school. Even in terms of practice, it helps. Like our practice with 40 guys is pretty intense. It's a lot different than if we just had 25 guys.
Yeah, and especially like the aspect of getting everyone involved with 40 guys sounds like something that really could work well during practice. And I just want to like talk about your offense a little bit. I think your quarterback maybe had the most passing yards in the league, or was definitely top three, and that's like maybe unconventional for like the class or the league, maybe especially like at smaller schools. Is that something you have always done? Something you enjoy, just like coaching? What goes into that?
Uh, so one thing about you asked earlier about like the coaching philosophy, and one thing that I'm a firm believer of is you kind of have to adapt to what you have. You
Mm-hmm.
know, um, there were years where we might have thrown the ball. I don't know, 6 to 8 times in a game because we had like 4 or 5 guys in the backfield that can run. A huge offensive line. The last couple years, we kind of haven't had that since I've been back at Tuckahoe. It's kind of changed a little bit. I don't have that like big bruising back. Like, we always had like 1,000-yard back. I don't have that kid right now in my program. But what we've been fortunate is to have some good quarterbacks and some pretty decent skill kids. The quarterback this year, Jax Colachico, he ended up breaking the all-time record at Tuckahoe. So he threw for 3,405 yards, which is amazing. It's a lot of yards. But you know what? He's a very smart kid. I had him in the Eastchester Blue Devils when he was 5. Mm-hmm. So I've known him for a long time. I've been able to really watch him grow up. I did not know that I was going to be his high school coach. I always knew that he was going to be a good high school football player. But we were able to put a lot on him, I think, just because of his smarts. So again, it's really just adapting to what we have.
Yeah, and the week before a game, a lot of coaches do it differently with the practice intensity and how much time you spend inside in the film room preparing. What is your week before a game kind of like, and how do you approach game week? Like from a film standpoint, from a physicality standpoint, like where do you want to be in season?
Sure. I think it would start with, say like we play our game on a Saturday. By Sunday morning, we'll put our game up. We're pretty big on using Huddle, mm-hmm. Myself and the rest of the coaching staff. So what we'll do is we'll mark up our game from, the day before in terms of like what we did well, what we need to work on. And we'll send that out to the guys right away. By Sunday afternoon, Sunday night, then we'll share the opponent's film with everybody. On Monday, what we'll do is when we come in, usually we'll get a lift in, and we kind of break it down. Like usually we'll have a varsity B scrimmage, so our younger kids have the opportunity to scrimmage somebody. And then our varsity kids, which we're usually left with about 20, give or take, we'll break it down, whether it be like offensive lineman lift, offensive backs and receivers will watch film, okay? And then those guys will switch. So both groups will get a lift and a film, and then we'll usually watch defense as a team. Depending on what we have going on for that week, we might go on the field Monday for a little bit, just with helmets, just do a little bit of a walkthrough. That changes week by week. Tuesday, we're up and running with offense. We go full equipment on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. Tuesday's a full offensive practice. So for us, a full practice is about 2.5 hours. So usually it would be offense for about 2 hours, and we'll do a little bit of defensive install at the end of Tuesday. Wednesday, we flip it. So it'll be a primarily defensive day with a little bit of offense sprinkled in at the end. In terms of defensive practice, we won't tackle live, but we'll do tackling circuits. I think that's important to make sure that, we're running to the football and that we're, tackling the pads at least every single week. Thursday for us, we split. So that's also, we make sure we get our special teams in on Thursday. And then we'll do, an hour offense and an hour of defense. And Friday, I'm not really big on walkthroughs, especially like at Tuckahoe. Like I feel like our guys still need a little bit more. So we have, helmets and shoulder pads on. We'll take it down a notch in terms of the contact. But, we're still moving on a Friday for the most part. It'll be very similar to what Thursday is for us. We'll go through all of our specials. A little more situation stuff on a Friday in terms of, make sure our goal line is good. 2 minute on both sides for offense and defense. Just make sure the whole game plan is in. Saturday mornings, we do a walkthrough, and then we get ready for the game on the afternoon.